from Serious Decisions, and Ross Weems from ReachForce. This webinar will be split with our two speakers. John Dunlin will cover top challenges for marketers, 3 pillars for data management, 4 approaches to data management, and the components of data management proficiency. Ross Weems will cover why data unification and the ReachForce platform. We will also close with a Q&A session. Please use the chat window to ask your questions at any time during the call. Also, please make sure your phone is muted at all times. With that, I'll hand it over to John Dunlin from Serious Decisions. John?
Great, thanks, Terry, and thanks to you, Ross, for having me on this webcast, and thanks everybody for joining. I'm really excited to share the content that we have prepared for you, and then with the Q&A session, look forward to hearing your questions and having a good discussion then too. So as Terry mentioned, I wanted to start off with setting a little bit of context, and I wanted to talk about what some of the top challenges are for marketers in general before we dive into data management. The first, at Serious Decisions, we do a lot of primary research, and so we've got some interesting statistics to share with you. The first is that from what we've found, 67% of the buyer's journey is done digitally. And I always laugh when I see this stat because it has a tendency to get misinterpreted. The way I've seen it interpreted is that buyers are 67% of the way through the buyer's journey before they engage with an organization or before they tap you on the shoulder and want to do business with you. And that's not necessarily the case. It's more that the interaction is done digitally. And it's true enough that that people are doing a lot more research online, and the power has kind of shifted to them as opposed to the salesperson to gather information early in the buyer's journey. But it's more that the journey is done digitally rather than how far along they are. The other thing that makes me laugh about this is how inflated this number has gotten over the years. So if you've watched this number, it seems to have grown, from 40% along to 50% to, I read something the other day that said the buyers are 85% of the way through the buyer's journey before they ever pick up the phone and decide to engage with you. And it's kind of like my mom in the wintertime telling me that I lose 98% of my heat through my head, so I better wear a hat when I go outside. So there has been a little hyperbole, a little overinflation of this number through the years, but the point is, it's still the same. Buyers are doing more and more research online. They're more empowered when they do reach out to you. And so one of the biggest challenges for marketers is to get out ahead of that and be present and drive good awareness, preference, perception at the top of the waterfall, so that buyers have a good impression of them, and when they start interacting with them digitally, that they, that they're one of the top choices that make kind of their early cut. The second statistic I wanted to share is that there is just a ton of content that goes unused. We found that 60 to 70% of all content that gets created goes unused, and this is just an unbelievable statistic. I mean, certainly there's a lot of content that gets used once, and organizations have trouble figuring out how to atomize it. But whether it's low impact content that gets put on the website but never viewed, or content that's created for sales enablement and then just really not used by the sales team, they'll pick out the few key pieces assets that they like to work with and kind of ignore the rest. There's just a ton going on with content, and with the shift to an inbound strategy, hand in hand with that is content creation and trying to drive people to your site and engage with them, and so the ability to manage all of this content and to be really targeted with the content is so important, and it's important to understand where that content is being used in the buyer's journey, what the most effective pieces are, and then which pieces really just aren't working at all. The next piece that I want to share with you is around segmenting and targeting. So this is a big challenge, obviously, for marketers. The old outbound email spray and pray method is probably not totally gone, sad to say, but it's been minimized. And so marketers are really, the organizations we speak with we're finding organizations are really struggling with being able to do everything from that top-level macro market opportunity analysis all the way down to targeting specific audiences so that they can get their messaging right in a way that really resonates with them. And one of the problems there is that the contact database, a quarter to a third of it will go stale every year. So if if your contact database, if you haven't touched it in a couple of years, chances are the majority of it has gone bad because people move around, they change jobs within the company, they leave the organization, and so this is something that you really have to be able to stay on top of if you want to be able to do effective segmentation, put people in the buckets into which they belong, and not just have everybody fall into the miscellaneous bucket. The next statistic I think is fairly interesting too. We did some research leading up to our big annual conference in May, our summit, which in 2015 is going to be held in Nashville, which will be a lot of fun. Hope those of you on the line can make it. But we looked at the different ways that organizations can grow, and we have 5 growth pillars. Organizations can grow through new markets, new buyers, new offerings, through acquisition, or through productivity gains. And what we found is that the 3 of those comprise almost 75% of the way that organizations are going to grow moving forward. And in order to do that, marketers need to have good relationships with the other teams inside their companies. So, of course, there's the classic marketing versus sales tension that can exist of, hey, you never follow up on our leads, well, your leads stink, that kind of stuff. But, with marketing owning more and more of the technology, they're kind of pulling that away from IT, but still they need to be able to connect to the other technologies that are out there in the company, and they're going to need IT's help with that. We're seeing the customer experience function grow more and more, and a lot of times that's held inside of marketing, and so that requires a tight relationship with the product team. And so, if with this many organizations looking to grow in these ways, marketers need to be able to foster the relationships that they have with those other teams. And then the last challenge I wanted to share with you is, interestingly, we saw that almost 70% of organizations have some kind of measurement, some kind of KPIs and metrics that they're using to evaluate their performance, but very few of them are using analytics to help drive that performance. So, not so many people doing detailed win-loss analysis, not a lot of people looking at the tactic mix and what's the secret sauce. It's still a lot of kind of finger in the wind sort of marketing, and yet CMOs are feeling a ton of pressure from the CEOs to be able to prove marketing's value and their contribution back to the business. And so there's really kind of a disconnect here. And so, there has been a shift in the last 5-10 years. Organizations are getting more and more data-driven, but, it's sort of, there's this, people are using that almost as a phrase, yeah, we're data-driven, but they're not really, we're not seeing that they're backing it up necessarily, and that's a problem. So at the heart of this, and if you've been reading the Serious Perspective here at the top of the slide all along, you can see that data management complexity is really at the heart of everything we're doing. All of these different challenges all come back to data management, complexity, dealing with the data that you have. There are massive amounts of data out there. Russ, we can advance it to the next slide if you like. And it's really difficult for marketers to be able to rein in all of this data. And if we go to the next slide, we can see another disconnect, just like the disconnect around proving marketing's value, and that we found that 63% of organizations are decently able to access and manipulate their data as it is today. Not a great number, not terrible, but could be a little bit stronger. But on the flip side, only 13% feel confident that they can move forward with the expanding universe of data. And so that's a huge disconnect. There's this sense that, okay, we're kind of treading water, we're doing okay with the data that we have now, but oh my gosh, there's this tsunami of data coming down the line, and we're not really sure how to handle it. So these are the business challenges that marketers are facing, and then a lot of it comes back to effective data management. So we have a couple of constructs that we use to help our clients cut through some of this clutter and start to organize their thinking around data management and the sorts of things that they can do. One of them is what we refer to as the 3 pillars of data management. Now, the first pillar is around data quality, and this is where a lot of organizations tend to focus. If you don't have very many resources, you probably have some people dedicated to keeping the data clean, doing cleanse and append activities, making sure the data is up to snuff, that sort of thing. And that's logically that's the first place to go. But a lot of organizations don't look past that. They think data management is just about data quality, and it's really about a couple other things. It has a lot to do with unification. So bringing data together from disparate places throughout the organization. So, you might be doing a great job of keeping your marketing data clean or your sales and marketing data clean. But what about that billing or customer care information that would be, so important to know, so that you don't start hammering someone with a marketing campaign if they've had a lot of complaints lately, or you can better understand the cross-sell, upsell opportunities if you knew the account was in trouble and they weren't making payments, that sort of thing. So bringing all that data together is hugely important, and then equally important is giving people good access to it. So it's all well and good to have all this clean data and have it in one place, but if people don't have the ability to access that data and serve it up in a way that's easy for them to digest, then it doesn't do any good. It might as well be locked in a box down in the basement. And then the last aspect, this cuts across all 3 pillars, is the idea of ownership and governance. And it's so important in the world of data management to have somebody who owns this. So often we see that data management reduced to data quality can be a third of one person's job that they get to, maybe. And it's really more important to have this, treat it as a thing that needs to be managed, probably with a budget line item, and to have some governance over each of these 3 processes so that you have somebody watching out for these sorts of things. So another construct that you can use to think about how you might approach your data management is one of 4 ways of managing it and of governing it. One is just to plain old do the basics, and we see this a lot in startups where, frankly, data management isn't a priority and probably shouldn't be the most top of mind thing that they have. They may not even have probably a light marketing department, probably not even a marketing ops function, and within marketing ops, data management is low down on the priority list. And in some cases that this is fine. It's a conscious choice that some organizations will make, but some larger organizations take this approach as well. And the problem is it just creates bad habits. When you just ignore the data, you get into a situation where every once in a while somebody will scream about how bad the data is. Everybody scrambles and goes through a big data cleanup exercise, but nobody owns it going forward, and then a year later you're back in the same spot. So that's one approach. Makes sense in some situations, not in others. The second approach is to prioritize. So maybe now you've got some resources that you can apply to data management, but you can't do everything. So you say, all right, we're going to pick out a handful of fields, a handful of data attributes that we really care about, that we think are the most impactful to our more forward-facing marketing processes, and we're going to take care of those. We're going to make sure that those are clean, that they're coordinated up and downstream with the other systems that are using them, and we're just going to worry about those, and as we get more resources, then we'll expand the scope a little bit. So that's the second approach. We see that with a lot of organizations. The third and fourth are kind of flavors of one another. So the first is the idea of bringing the sales and marketing data together. So again, you've got limited resources. You can't go out and tackle the world and bring all the data together that you'd like, but you say, we're just going to bite off sales and marketing data. It's more than just a handful of fields that we care about. We're going to make sure all this data is synced up and fairly clean. And there's a couple of different versions of this. So one might be to extend an operational system that you're already using and have that as the single source of the truth. So like Salesforce.com is a great example because it's such an open platform. A lot of organizations will say, Salesforce is our source of the truth. We're going to sync everything into Salesforce. We're going to do all our reporting out of there, and that's going to be it. And we're going to leverage that as a platform. The other version of it is to create yet another data store. So now all the systems that you would care about, your web platform, your marketing automation platform, Salesforce administration, maybe some web analytics, social, all that is going to flow down into a separate database, and it's going to go through some kind of normalization, standardization process to get out the dupes and standardize names and that sort of thing. And they're going to treat that as the one place where all the sales and marketing data gets brought together. So a couple of different flavors of the same approach. And then the fourth one is same idea. You're bringing data together and you're keeping it clean, but you're doing it probably plugging into the enterprise data warehouse. So if the organization has a corporate data store like that, where operational data from all around the company comes in, flows through an ETL, an extract, transform, and load process, then it gets standardized. And then what we see is coming off of that big data warehouse is a marketing data mart. So it's a subset of the information that's in there with the information that you care about. And now there's the opportunity to bring in that customer care or that billing information and combine it with the sales and marketing data that you're already familiar with. So a few different versions. The plugging into the EDW can be, it means you've got to interact with IT, which sometimes can be a little bit of a cumbersome process depending on your organization. But you do have the advantage of getting access to more data. We see a lot of organizations kind of taking approaches 2 and 3, where they're trying to understand the data elements that are important to them, and they say, okay, we can manage these. And then as the scope grows a little bit, they say, okay, now we're gonna try and bring together all the sales and marketing data that we care about. So the last concept that I wanted to share with you is a proficiency assessment that we created in the last year, and this has been really helpful for a lot of our clients to help them understand what their capabilities are around data management. And it's pretty straightforward. There are 5 criteria that you would look at, and it's a self-assessment, so you grade yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 in each of these areas. And it's a great way to understand where you are with data management and then understand what it takes to get to the next level. And so this is kind of a snapshot. This is an easy graphic. There's obviously a lot of content behind what each of these levels are for the different categories. But I'll give you a quick overview of the different categories to help you understand a little bit about the different components of data management, the way we think about it. So the first is process, and this is the way you're able to execute against those 3 pillars that we talked about. So how well are you able to keep your data clean? How well are you able to unify the data, bring it all together, and how well are you able to give easy access to that data to the different users that care about it? And it can be, so those are sort of the broad categories, but it can also be down into the really specific things like your list pull process. So how cumbersome is that? Is there a lot of back and forth between a demand manager and marketing ops and trying to get a nice segmented list together before that you would use for an outbound email, or is that a clean and pretty efficient process? So a few different things there in terms of how well the process of data management is established in your organization. The second aspect is the interlock, and this gets back to your ability to have relationships with the other parts of the organization. So how well does this is kind of taken from a marketing ops perspective, how well does marketing ops work with sales ops in terms of sharing information about data, new fields that are getting created, the syncing, the pick list values that might be in one system versus the other, and also working with demand managers. Demand managers need to be able to use the data to drive demand. So what does that relationship look like? Similarly with sales, what's the relationship look like with the reps to try and understand what kind of data and information is important to them, and then feed that back into the cleansing, the unification, the access processes that you have going on. The third criteria, the third category is what you're doing around skills and roles. So certainly there's an aspect of how much experience do you have on your team in terms of data management experts or data stewards, but then also, to what degree do you have data management carved out as a specific role? So, I mentioned before, we see a lot of organizations, it's kind of a part-time job for one person on the team, but how much emphasis is put on this from an organizational perspective, in that you've got a team of people doing data management, or at least you have one person carved out as the data steward who is always thinking about data management issues. And then in measurement, there's a couple of different things here. So one of the reasons that data gets overlooked so easily is that it's hard to measure and promote how well things are going with data. And it's kind of it's like a table stakes kind of thing. Everybody sort of rolls their eyes when you talk about data and say, yeah, I know, we need data, it needs to be good. It's not a very sexy topic. Nobody wants to kind of roll up their sleeves and get in there. And the people that do aren't necessarily great at promoting the good work that they're doing. So measurement becomes a really important aspect of this. And there's a couple of different aspects of measurement when you look at data management. One is the readiness sort of measurement. So this is, take the contact database, for example. How many names do we have in the contact database? How many of the right names do we have? How is that trending? Are we getting more and more of the right kinds of names? Do we have enough names to meet what we've worked with demand managers with to find out are the number of names that we're going to need for the year? This sort of thing. So there's sort of, all these readiness metrics that you can look at to help understand how poised are we to support the more forward-facing marketing processes and to be able to help those. And then the other set is the impact that you're having on those processes. So, are we seeing higher conversion rates with the contacts that have more contact information filled out about them, that's more accurate, that's fresher? Are we seeing fewer disqualifications from the sales reps because of bad contact data? These sorts of things. What kind of downstream impact is the data really having? So, it's important to get these kinds of measurements in place because it proves the value of data management, beyond just kind of a gut feel of, oh yeah, we should probably improve our data, and it can unlock things like more funding for the different data initiatives that you want to undertake. And then the last aspect is corporate culture. So, this is really kind of a scale to try and understand what does your organization look like in terms of its attitude towards data. Is it really resistant? Is it really finger in the wind kind of marketing? And yeah, data's nice, but it's going to be the executive's call on what direction we go in. Or at the other end, are you totally data driven and you make a lot of your decisions based on data, and you don't make a move unless you've got the analysis behind it. So a few different ways of characterizing where you are in terms of data management. And then, like I said, the idea is figure out where you are and then create a roadmap for moving forward so that you can better your proficiency and your capabilities around data management. So, if there's one thing Ross, before I turn it over to you, if there's one thing if I could leave you with, it's, it's getting back to the three pillars. And the idea is that, there's more to data management than just data quality. You really want to start to look at the unification of data and giving people good access to data. Those are sort of the, when you've got the basics down, those are the next areas to turn to. And, we see a lot of organizations focusing on the quality aspect of things, but really that unification is huge, as is the access. So Ross, I want to hand it over to you because I know you've got some good content that you want to share as well.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it. Those are all great topics you talked about. And so I want to continue with the thought for a few minutes about the data unification part, as you've been speaking about. So one of the things that we at ReachForce are really big into is data unification. And so I want to spend just a few minutes talking about why data unification and why that's important to us. First off, it allows you to have customer lifecycle marketing. And that is where you get to do customer acquisition. The life cycle of that customer marketing is customer acquisition, collections, customer service, customer retention, strategic nurturing, and prospect engagement. And so when you have unified data, that allows you to complete the lifecycle management piece. So you're able to have a 360 view throughout the whole process of your customer engagement. The other thing that allows you to have is lead to account linkage. So let me talk about that, what that means. For example, if I come in and show interest, whether I download a white paper, review a webinar, etc., I go as a lead into your marketing account. But what you may not know is that my boss is already a current happy customer. With lead to account linkage, you're able to know, in fact, that that person is already a customer. So, for example, if I come in and say, I come in and I download a white paper, but my boss is actually already a real happy customer. With lead to account linkage, you're able to actually nurture me in a different way, knowing that I'm actually already a customer and not just somebody that's coming in off the street. You can campaign and nurture me in a different way. Another thing you can do is cross-sell, upsell. So with a 360 view of your customer, so for example, when you're unified your marketing and data, you can easily segment on what customers currently purchase product A. Then, with that information, you're able to sell them product B, and this presents a cross-sell opportunity. You can also upsell if there's a bundle opportunity. So for example, let's say that they already own product A, and you want to promote to them product B and C. You're able to use our system with the unified data, having the marketing cells together, to able to bundle those together and promote a promotion that the customer doesn't even know about these other products. And you can set this up on a reoccurring schedule. The other things you can do is strategic nurturing. So renewed interest. Let's say that the customer, you had to close a lost opportunity, it's linked to an account. But at some point, maybe they come back to you and say, hey, there's a white paper available, or I want to download that. That link is created in the existing, when you do that account to lead linkage, it's created in the existing CRM account. This gives you the ability to see a closed-off opportunity that has showed some renewed interest and potentially nurture and campaign to them in a different way. Renewals, very important. So if you have your supports, I'll talk about that in a second, potentially unhappy customers. But with renewals, you'll be able to know with your data is all linked together whether or not there's a promotional campaign and get them to re-up or extend the contract. With unhappy customers, the great thing is if your support system is tied into through ReachForce, through our unified platform, what you can do is say, okay, these customers are 3 months out from renewing. Let's take a look at how many support tickets they've actually sent in the last 6 months, and let's see if they're really going to be what we would call a happy customer, or if we need to nurture and campaign them in a different direction, or even reach out to them directly. If you're seeing a lot of support tickets and unhappiness, you're going to want to try to get to them before it's time for them to make a decision on whether or not they're going to re-up or not. The last thing you can do is marketing attribution, which figuring out what resonated with the customer. So what you want to do here is, let's say you have 4 campaigns, campaign A, B, C, and D. Campaign A, they completely ignored it. Campaign B, they opened the URL, checked out the website, maybe downloaded something. On campaign C, they actually contacted sales and made the purchase. But on campaign D is when that closed one is actually recognized in your in your sales system. So, but what you don't realize is all the marketing activity to make them purchase happened in campaign C. So with campaign D is the only campaign it's associated with. With ReachForce, we're able to give you that complete picture of when did they actually make the purchase, and then you can see, oh, well, it's actually campaign C that resonated. We should use that campaign more often, or those types of nurturing to our customers versus campaign D. All this information gives you a 360 view of your customer. So what does that look like? Well, we've talked about it. So on the next slide, data unification enables a 360 view. So basically, look at it this way. If you see what we've got at the top, we've got all these different systems we're able to use. We build out that nurturing campaigns with unified data, which we've talked about. Here's something really important, though. It helps you escape the daily grind. What do I mean by that? Well, our system is constantly validating company data and appending it. We do email deliverability and phone dialability. So we're constantly taking care of that data quality management for you. You don't have to worry about taking care of that. Our system does that. We're also able to utilize your support data for insight to customer satisfaction. This will help you build better Customer brand loyalty. Basically, again, able to see the support system can be tied into our system and see what those customers are asking for, what are their complaints, what are their wants. And then the third thing is when you able to do that marketing attribution, lead to account linkage, cross-sell, upsell, and strategic nurturing. But if you look at the bottom, that's where really the important stuff happens. So if you think about it, you have a master record that's got the personal data, the address data, the appended data from us, and the account data. And all that gets tied into our ReachForce Cloud, our ReachForce platform, and then you can tie in your disparate silos of data, your support cases, your opportunity data, your marketing data. All of that gets tied in to, all that gets tied into through the ReachForce, the marketing activity data as well. So what does this look like? Well, this is what the ReachForce platform really looks like. The ReachForce platform is made up of two products. First is SmartForms. So SmartForms, think of it like this. You as marketers, you're well aware that shortening your forms increases your form conversion rate. However, in doing so, you lose critical information needed for segmentation and qualification. So here's kind of an example of what you get with SmartForms. You're able to get your first name and last name, email, company, and phone. And from that information, this is what we put into we put it in on the back end. This is all the information you get based off of what they filled out. So not only do we give you the basic information, which they can fill out very quickly, we give you the capability to see all the information on the back end, the address. We can go 4 levels of hierarchy, even beyond this, industry, annual revenue, employee count, the things that are critical to what you're wanting to do and how you're wanting to segment your campaigns on. So this is what you get with SmartForms on the front end. The other piece of SmartForms, the other piece of the ReachForce platform is CDQM. CDQM has the 3 pillars: data quality, data unification, and data insights. And that's the platform we were talking about. And some of the things that John talked about earlier also are a part of our platform as well. So this is just a very high level of what you get with the ReachForce platform. Of course, the data quality, you get the cleanse and append. Data unification, which we've talked a lot about today, which is the 360 view of your customer. And then you also get data insights, segmentation, and you can able to use that to segment and get insights onto your customers. This is kind of an example dashboard that we have where you can see, is your data coming to our system, how many verified street addresses are there, your email deliverability, duplicate and junk detection, verified phone numbers, and the firmographic appends that we've made to your data as well. So all these wrap up to give you a single unified 360 look at the data that's coming in from your marketing, sales, system, support, whatever. We're able to take all this information and unify it. With that, that completes our webinar. We do have a few minutes for some questions. Terry, do you have any questions you've found from the people on the phone?
I do. John, maybe you can help answer this one. What are some other best practices when it comes to managing marketing data?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a bunch that are out there. Some of which we talked about already. So there's just kind of treating data management as a thing, as something that somebody needs to pay attention to and worry about. Having a plan for it for the year and executing against it, and then having an owner. Those are some of the big ones that we covered a little bit earlier. But some of the other ones are, it's really important for whoever's in that role, whoever owns data management, or if it's a data steward, that sort of thing, for them to be really active in soliciting from the customers of the data what's important to them from a quality perspective. So, how do they want to see the data? What pieces of information are important to them? A lot of times we find that people in marketing ops or in sales ops just kind of assume they know what the end users need. Or they'll serve up something that they that they think is important to them without going out and asking them directly. And so it's really important to turn back to the customers and find out what it is that's important to them. The other thing, I touched on this before, but data management really, it has to be a lifestyle change. It can't be this once a year scramble and cleanup activity. You've got to think about this as a persistent activity in the organization, and that's one of the best practices. And then the other thing is to promote the good work that you're doing. I mean, again, it's not necessarily in the nature of those who like to roll up their sleeves and get dirty with the data to go out and toot their own horn necessarily, but it's really important because, first of all, it proves out the business case just internally to say, yeah, it makes sense that we're spending money on data improvements because, look, it's really helping improve the database, improve the state of data, and improve the more forward-facing marketing activities that we're doing. But then also, it can help build the business case for more funding too around data. So those are some of the other best practices that we're seeing out there.
Okay, we have another question. Ross, I think this one should be for you. Are those the only systems you connect to?
That's a great question, Terry. So the ReachForce platform can connect to any disparate database, whether that be homegrown, that's your own, or of course we connect to all the big names out there, Salesforce, Marketo, Eloqua, etc. Some of them we connect differently with. So some, for example, we connect with our native API. So we're able to do it that way. Others, if there's a unique system, we can build custom integrations as well. So there's not, in terms of the database, don't ever think about that it won't work. We have the expert knowledge here to be able to make any system work with our unified ReachForce platform.
Okay, next question is for John. John, with so much data to manage, how do you prioritize your focus?
Yeah, well, that's a good one, and it's something that a lot of organizations struggle with. We've been talking this whole hour about how much data is out there that you could possibly go out and try and get and wrangle and bring in, and one of the ways that we help our clients think about that is there are different processes that are particularly data intensive that really rely a lot on data to be effective. And so one of the strategies that you can use is to look at those, there are 6 processes, and you can kind of focus on those 6, or if you feel like you don't have the bandwidth to look across all 6, or maybe all 6 of those aren't a priority for your organization, pick out the 2 or 3 that really matter to you and put your focus there. And those 6 processes that we found are market intelligence. So this is both the idea of going out and doing that macro opportunity analysis, but then also the segmentation that you might be doing. Obviously, data is key to, like Ross was saying, be able to tell a customer from a prospect. The second is personalization. So like with smart forms, being able to either shorten a form so that someone doesn't have to complete as many fields, or to pre-populate them so that they don't have to do the work and they have the opportunity to correct it. It also gets at personalizing content on the website itself. So to the extent that you can recognize them as the person that they are, or the company that they're coming from, or even the segment that they're a part of, then you can customize the content that they see immediately when they come to your site. So that personalization obviously relies a lot on data. Lead scoring and lead routing are the next 2. So that you can have the best scoring algorithm in the world, but if you've got poor data going into it, then you're going to incorrectly assign the lead level and get the lead over to sales either too soon or too late. And with routing, if you don't have accurate data there, then a lot of things are going to end up in the miscellaneous bucket, or they're going to get routed to the wrong rep the first time around. So data is really important in those 2. And then the last 2 are outbound outreach. So this would be anything that you would do with email, outbound email marketing, or the information that the sales rep needs when they pick up the phone for the first time and talk to someone. Anything around that kind of outbound outreach is important. And then the last one is the biggest bucket is probably reporting and analytics. Obviously there's a lot that goes into that bucket, but data is so important there. If you've got the wrong data going into your analytics, you're going to draw the wrong conclusions and make some poor choices from a business perspective. So again, one of the things you can do is you can look at, look at those processes, and maybe there are a couple other at your organization that are particularly data intensive, and narrow it down to those. And then that's where you can put your chips in terms of your focus on data management.
Okay, it looks like that's it for our questions. We thank you so much for joining us, and that concludes our webinar.